You're about to see a Fix It Friday video where an idiot with very little technical skill or knowledge will attempt to fix something. This is not a how-to video and is likely to be factually incorrect and at times dangerous. Please don't copy Kip and see this video for limited entertainment purposes only. Roll titles.
Welcome to the channel if it's your first time here, and welcome back if it's not. Now in today's video, which is a Fix It Friday, we'll be looking at this. What's in the box? Well, you know, because you've seen the title and description of the video, so it's no real surprise. Ooh, it smells a bit funky. Anyway, this is a Sega Game Gear, as you well know, and I got this from eBay. I'll put the listing up on the screen now, and I think it was around about £32. And it basically said that it's in fairly good cosmetic condition, but when you switch it on, the screen displays sort of like TV static, and there's sort of no sound, which is interesting. I thought, that sounds a bit different to the Game Gears I've looked at already. So, yeah, there it is. And as they say, yeah, it's in pretty good cosmetic condition. It's got a sort of slightly scratched up bezel, but actually that's not too bad. I've seen a lot worse. We've got one of the little wrist strap things. Looks okay. Now this model is made in Taiwan, which is interesting because I don't think any of mine have actually come from Taiwan. I think there's some differences between the ones made in Japan and Taiwan, but also there's lots of different revisions as well. So some of them are the same and some of them are a bit different. So I thought that would be interesting as well. Battery compartments look pretty clean. No sort of sign of hideous corrosion or anything like that. I don't know if anyone's been inside this one before. The listing was pretty vague. I guess what we'll do is we'll just put some batteries in and put a game in and see what it's doing. I mean, I'm thinking this might just need a cap kit, but I honestly don't know. Because there was no pictures of it on and doing what they've said, it's hard to tell. So I guess we should switch this on and see what it does. That's actually fully working. The screens on these are so shocking. Okay, so there's definitely no sound. But yeah, I can see Sonic. So yeah, absolutely no sound, but it is very much working. So I feel like this does just need a cap kit. Obviously, I've made many videos on Game Gears, and in pretty much all of them, I've installed screen kits. I've installed 3 different types of screen kit. First of all, I did the Ben Ven screen kit. Then I did the Retro 6 clean screen. And then more recently, I did the funny playing replacement that I got from AliExpress, which was a bit more fiddly. And I am going to make a video comparing all 3 of those to see which is the best. So maybe before I make that video, it would actually be good to have an almost stock Game Gear with sort of just the regular old-fashioned screen. Now, I think in one of my previous videos, I have done a cap kit and fully replaced the caps before, but I think in this one, I'm actually going to do it a little bit differently, and I'm going to use hot air because last time I used sort of basically brute force and my soldering iron. I'm going to give this one a go with hot air, certainly for removing the old caps, because the old caps can be a bit of a pain and a bit stinky to remove, and I'm just going to see if the hot air station makes it a little bit easier to remove them. I haven't done too much hot air stuff, so I'm not overly confident with it, but it might be a way of building confidence, I guess. So yeah, hopefully we can keep this a sort of stock Game Gear to kind of use as a control for my comparison of the 3 different types of screen. Okay, well, let's get into the Game Gear and see what's occurring. Now, as you know, if you watch my videos at this point, when I'm dismantling something, I give a shout out to all my channel members who've either joined via Facebook, Patreon or YouTube. And basically the channel members who give me a little bit of cash each month, help me afford to buy stuff like this. It really does help the channel. So if you do enjoy my videos, then please consider becoming a channel member through one of those 3 platforms. or even if you just hit the like button and maybe consider subscribing, that would be awesome as well, because I'm on the path to 20,000 subscribers and it would be awesome to have you along with me. But while I'm dismantling it, let's shout out all those awesome people that have already joined my channel. So first up of our channel members, we've got the kit fans, who are Matt Lovies, JRC Electrical, For the Burbs, Wayne Cornish, Mike Cass, Rob Lynn, Scott Made a Thing, Michael Wood, Draco MacGyver, Rebecca, Tom Wood and Chelsea B. Then you have to get up early to beat the Kip Early Birds, who are Dean Ball, Sean at Cablesmith Electrical, Tim Salt, Sorcerer Stan and Mark C. Love these guys and they love me too. They are the Kip lovers and they are the awesome Bella Webster, Stestics Fix, Lawrence, Scott Kendall and Props Retrofix. And then coming up the rear, not like that, we've got our amazing Kip nutters, who are the gorgeous Becky Boobar and the sublime Alan Green. Thank you both for your top tier support and big love to all the other channel members. Okay, wow, does it look slightly different? No, I don't think it looks massively different, although inside the case it's like this sort of, it's almost like it's rusty. It's been kind of, like, it feels like it's been sprayed with some sort of textured brown hammerite. That's really strange. But it is a VA1 board, so yes, nothing too strange. But yeah, I can see almost immediately why there's no sound on this. Those capacitors have leaked a lot. So much shmoo on there. Okay. Power board actually looks alright. There's no burst capacitors, but there could be some shmoo lurking underneath those ones. But yeah, this feels like a very honest and original Game Gear. I don't think this has had anyone into it before. The screws were torqued up quite tightly, and that sort of feels like one that definitely hasn't been played with before. But yeah, you can sort of see up here where the capacitors have become, well, incontinent, I guess. Here as well, bit of leakage. We've got a couple over here as well. That one, and there's one there. I mean, yeah, it's definitely not the worst one I've seen, especially on the main board. But I think that's probably one of the worst audio boards I've ever seen for leaking and schmooage. With regards to the soundboard, I might well have to actually use the soldering iron because there's so many plastic components. I think using the hot air might be a bit too maverick, especially with my limited hot air skills. Those can be done with just a regular soldering iron. But I think the ones on the board, I'm going to try and use a bit of hot air to get them off. Maybe not this one. This one I hate. I always hate doing this one because it's right next to this connector, right next to this coil. And yeah, it's a bit fiddly to get to. It does seem to feel fairly straightforward so far. I mean, I think it's been on for quite a while because, like, it looks burnt out there. But yeah, if we can get it working with just a cap kit and sort of have an original one, at least for the time being, before I get really annoyed with it and go, the screen's terrible. I'm thinking I will take this board out of the case, but leave the screen screwed in position, because you can do that. You see, if you leave that screw, this screw, and this screw, you can actually take the board out whole with the screen still in position. I'm not having to blow air in a hot plastic case. I'm gonna have to be careful of the cartridge connector here, but it's not too terrible. Yeah, so maybe if we concentrate on the main board first. Tell you what, if you've watched this far into the video, put the word pukka in the comments and I will tell you another word later to add with it. So if you watch this far, comment pukka, but there will be another word to go with it in a little bit, so keep watching. People really seem to love these Game Gear videos. I was slightly concerned that everyone would be getting bored and mad at me for doing them, but they all seem to be going down really nicely, which is positive because, like I've said before, I genuinely enjoy working on these. There's just something about them. They're sort of fairly resilient, hopefully. So now it should come out complete with the screen. So yeah, this looks all right really. Sort of bit of, don't know, maybe this is a bit of capacitor schmoo we might have to give a clean up with. So I think now it would be sensible to go under the microscope and sort of have a little closer look at the board and see if there's anything sort of untoward there. I mean, it's working, so it should be okay, but we can see a little bit closer the damage done by the capacitors. This doesn't look good. We might have just got this just in the nick of time because there's a lot of damage. Look at that. Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping the pads aren't damaged too much under these capacitors, but yeah, it's just looking a bit gross. But yeah, up here is a bit of a concern. Let's just see, a bit of IPA helps. Yeah, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some hot air onto this and maybe pull some of the capacitors off and then give it a good clean and hopefully see what we're left with. Now, you've got to be really careful when you're using hot air. Obviously, it's hot, but you've got to make sure you don't sort of melt and blow away other components because there are loads of tiny components. There's the end of my finger for scale. So yeah, it's very easy to just lose stuff, which obviously we do not want. So yeah, this is probably one of the first times I've done component work with hot air on camera. So I do apologise if I'm not very good or professional, but you've got to start somewhere. So I think what we'll do first is use the hot air and try and remove these two capacitors because they certainly look like the most damaged. That came off all right. They do absolutely stink. It smells like rotten fish. But yeah, that was relatively quick and easy. Right, so let's go in for number 2. Nice. Yeah, it's going to need a good old clean. Right, let's spin the board round and focus on this guy here. Okay, messed that one up slightly, but yeah, okay. Right, let's do this guy at the bottom. Got to try and be quick with this guy because we're right next to the cartridge slot. Nice. Coming off pretty well. This is so much quicker than doing it with the soldering iron and, you know, a bit of brute force for sure. I think this is becoming my preferred method. Nice. Right, this one. That went pretty well. Well, finally is this guy up here, this long boy. But yeah, I'm going to put some Kapton tape just to try and protect the plastic a little bit. But there's a high probability of me messing up and melting the plastic. But it's okay, we're learning. Right. Here comes the moment I've been dreading. I've put some Kapton tape there. I don't know if it's going to work, but I do have spare components if it does go horribly wrong. Oh, if you look at the bottom middle of the screen, you'll see me about to burn the board. Never mind. I'll learn for next time. The power cable looks a little bit crispy there, but that's not as bad as I was expecting. Cool, I'm actually really pumped at how well that went. That actually was pretty straightforward. So we can sort of see what we're left with now. a lot of shmoo. But yeah, I don't think I've blown any components off or dislodged anything, which is good. So yeah, I absolutely think that the method of using the hot air makes it so much quicker and easier to take the caps off. Give this whole area a bit of a clean. Yeah, this little guy here doesn't look particularly happy. It's quite corroded, but I think we've probably just got here in the nick of time. Oh, did I do that? Oh dear, that's a bit of a worry. Oh no, I'm sure I'll be fine. Yeah, pretty happy with all how that's looking. So if you're wondering what's going on here, I'm just going around the board, giving everything a bit of a clean and also removing some of the old solder with some wick. Now, it depends on how badly corroded your board is, the amount you'll have to do this. Sometimes the old solder is just really nasty and gone grim and takes a lot of cleaning. Other times it's not too bad. On this particular board, it wasn't too bad. And now what I'm also doing is just going around to where each capacitor is going to be and putting a blob of solder on just one of the pads, and I'll explain why in a second. So now we've got our main board with the capacitors removed and cleaned up mostly. And what I did was, where there was going to be a new capacitor, I went round and put a new blob of solder on one side only. Because what we're going to do is we're going to replace them with surface mount capacitors rather than the electrolytic capacitors that went before. What I find is, especially if you're using a soldering iron to put in the surface mount capacitors, it's easier to get one side of the surface mount in and in position and soldered, and then do the other side. And so I just put a blob of solder on one side and we can get one side soldered, and then we can add some new solder to the other side and get that one soldered in. I know that doesn't sound entirely clear, but it will do when I show you. Now, what capacitors do we need? What I'll do is I'll put it up on the screen now, what capacitors they are. So there are just three types of capacitor that go back onto this board. There's the 1 UF capacitors, there's the 10 UF capacitors, and then there's the 100 UF capacitors. And I've marked out on screen what goes where. Now, obviously you can use electrolytic capacitors. You have to pay attention to the polarity of those ones because they have a positive and negative marking on the board. But I find that the electrolytic capacitors, they just make it a lot harder to get the board back into the case because you have to worry about the positioning of them and everything like that. And also you have to avoid these gold plates because the other side of the case presses into those, and if you get a capacitor sort of dangling over those, it just won't get back together. So surface mount ones are a little bit fiddlier to put on in the first place, but it gives you a better job because you don't need to worry about polarity, and also it just means you can get the case back together a lot easier. Now, I have actually sort of built up my own cap kit with capacitors that I bought online. I got some from RS. If you're just doing one Game Gear, then I'd recommend maybe looking at Retro 6. They do one of these cap kits and it all comes with everything you need. So what we're going to do first are the 1 UF capacitors, and these are the sort of smallest ones, literally. And they go at position C55 and C54, and as you can see, I've got the one blob of solder on one side for them in readiness, and then we can get those soldered in position on one side and then add solder and heat to the other side. Let's get one capacitor with my tweezers and get it roughly in position. There we go. This is where I discover that I haven't got enough solder. But that's okay. I'm not going to cut it out. I'm going to keep it in and be honest. Oh, there we go. That's sort of sprung nicely into position. And then, yeah, we just add a bit of solder and heat to the other side. So C55 there is done. And then we've got to look at C54. I might just add a little bit more solder. Boop. There we go. Get our final 1 UF capacitor in position. Nearly, got a bit too much solder on my tip there. A little bit on the wonk, but that's okay, that's fine. Let's get some solder and heat on this side. So now we're going to look at our 10 UF capacitors. Now for this particular board there are 5 of them, and our first one is at C45, our next one is at C4, and then the rest are all over the other side of the board. So at C14, C42, and right at the bottom here, C11. So what I'll do is I'll do these ones sped up because it's exactly the same principle as before. Get the solder down on one side, get them in position, and then heat and solder on the other side, and you should be good. You have to be careful with C4 because obviously that's explosive. Amazing, so that is all our 10 UF capacitors done. Now we've got to move on to our 100 UF capacitors, and essentially they go in all the spaces where you haven't put a capacitor already, but we'll look at those closer under the microscope. So yeah, we've got one here at C68, then we've got one here at C43, and then we've got 2 over here at C48 and C49. And then our final one is down there at C1. Might start at C1. Right, and then finally C68, which is the one up here that I really hate, but you know, we got to do it. Well, there we go. That was all right, really. I think the 100 UF capacitors that I used, slightly thicker than the ones I normally use, so it made it a lot more fiddly than it should be, but they're okay. They're all right, really. I am slightly concerned where I was a bit overzealous with the heat gun in this corner, that I've done some lasting damage. I think it's okay, but yes. But yeah, honestly, this sort of cap kit is something that you could probably do with relatively little skill. I mean, I'm doing it. Yeah, you just sort of get into the swing of it, and it does help having a microscope. Makes things a little bit easier, but if you've got fairly good eyesight, it's not too bad. Now, the eagle eyes amongst you might have spotted this. This is the power board. This isn't the power board that it came with. This is just one of my test bench ones because I want to try it out and see if it's working. Now, I know sometimes in these videos, it seems a lot more exciting if you do all the work and put it all back together and yay, it works. But I'm trying to do this realistically for you guys because I want you to try this out for yourself and do it for yourself on your Game Gears. And the best way of doing it is to do one part of the job and check you're working. We knew that we started off with a Game Gear that sort of worked, but it didn't have any sound and the display was quite dim. Now, obviously, I've not done the sound or the power board yet, but I'm hoping at least we'll have a Game Gear that is more visible and viewable, and then we can go and do the power board and the soundboard next. So yeah, let's check our working before we get too carried away, because if I've destroyed the Game Gear up in this corner, it's pretty much game over. But I hope we're going to be okay. Right, okay, so let's get the bench power supply connected. So our positive terminal goes where we don't have the spring, and the negative terminal goes where we have the spring. Get some voltage on, and let's switch it on, and hopefully we have a working Game Gear that we can at least sort of see. Right, lights on. There we go. Amazing. So we haven't done any damage at all. And actually, that looked clearer than it did before. The viewing angles on these screens are terrible. So where I'm sitting right now, I can't really see the screen, but looking at it overhead on the overhead camera, you can see it. And it does just go to show just how bobbins the screens are. But look, we can see it. It works. Excellent. So we've got a working Game Gear still, which is good. Now we obviously need to do the power board and the soundboard of our original one. I think I'm going to do the power board first and then the soundboard. But because it's getting a bit late in the day now, I'm going to come back in a day or so and work on those two boards, but it'll be literally seconds for you guys. But yeah, we're doing all right. Seems to be quite happy, and oh man, that looks good. Excellent. Cool. Right. Let's come back in a second with Future Kip doing the power board. So it's time to turn our attention to this side of the case now. And first of all, we're going to look at this, which is our power board. So let's get it out. Just a couple of screws. And we've also got to pull off this sort of plastic cover here, because otherwise it won't come out. Oh, that is actually glued onto here. I've not noticed that before. I don't know whether all my other Game Gears that I've worked on have had people in them already. I don't think all of them have, but yeah, this is glued onto the battery terminal. There we go. So yes, this is our power board, and it has 3 electrolytic capacitors. Now, we don't replace these ones with surface mount capacitors. They still have to be electrolytic capacitors. So the removal method is a bit different. So the 3 capacitors are a 22 UF at 35 volts. We've got 100 UF at 25 volts. And the big boy is 1000 UF at 10 volt. Now you might find that the bigger capacitor on your board is a slightly different value, but that's okay. You're absolutely fine to use the 1000 UF at 10 volts capacitor. That will work beautifully. Now to remove these, I'm just going to heat the legs of the components and gently pull them off the board. Now there are different ways of doing this. You could use a solder sucker or whatever really, but yeah, I think I'm just gonna do a little pull. It's a bit hard to demonstrate under the microscope, but I'll try my best. I didn't capture that very well, but yeah, just a sort of a warm up and a tug is all it needs. Right, okay, so now we're ready to put our new capacitors in. So we have to pay attention because these capacitors are polarized, so you need to make sure they go the right way round. So this white mark on the board here denotes the negative side of the capacitor. So if we go like that, There we go. So we have got negative side going into our negative side. Just add a bit of flux. Nice. Nice. Right, we'll snip the legs off all in one go at the ends. So next to it, now we're going to put in our 100 UF at 25 volts. So again, it's important to make sure the legs are the right way round. The white bit is going to the white bit. We'll clean that flux up in a second. Then finally, we've got our 22 UF at 35 volts, and that is going in here. And I don't think I've got the hole properly through on that one. Yeah, I'm just gonna apply a bit of heat and push the leg through. There we go. I was just applying some heat to the legs as they were going in to melt the sort of bit of solder that was still stuck on the board. Just happens sometimes. So all we need to do now is give the legs a little snippety snip and then give the board a clean, and then the power board is done. So there we go, one finished power board. I think probably what's best to do is just again test our work as we're going along, because it's a lot easier to sort of revisit this in a second rather than getting everything back together and realizing it's not working. So instead of using my test bench power board, we'll use this power board and make sure the game gear is working. Okay, so let's turn it on with the original power board. Hopefully we should just have everything working. Oh. No. Interesting. Right, let's double check everything. Yep, I know what I did. I did reverse polarity. I wasn't paying attention. Oh man, there we go. Important to check you're working. Never mind. You see the white bit on this capacitor does not align with the white bit on that capacitor. But I'm not going to edit it out. I'm going to leave it in. Just, you know, show in good faith that it's very easy to make mistakes. And also on YouTube, it's very easy to edit them out. I'm just going to use the solder sucker, that'll make it quicker. Now while my solder sucker's warming up, remember earlier I told you to put something in the comments. Add the word radish to what I told you. I know it makes literally no sense, but when I was little, my sister wanted to make that a thing where if something was really good, it was that other word and radish. I don't know. So yeah, let's give a little tribute to my older sister and put that word from earlier next to the word radish in the comments. And like people who haven't seen this bit of the video because they've skipped it will be very confused when they look at the comments. Assume this capacitor's going to be okay. I didn't power it for too long, so hopefully everything should be okay. Let's plug it in. Right, 3, 2, 1. Excellent, there we go. So now we can move on and do our soundboard. Awesome. So to get the soundboard out, we need to remove this cartridge plate, and that's the 4 screws there. Right, and then we need to get this soundboard out. And you can see by the corrosion on that screw there, this isn't looking very clever. I mean, there's corrosion all around it. So yeah, I'm a bit concerned about this soundboard. Hopefully a recap will fix it, but who knows? Yeah, getting it under the microscope just goes to show how bad things are. Right, I think we're just gonna have to start removing capacitors and giving it all a clean. Now you can just gently use some needle nose pliers and twist and pull these capacitors to get the worst of them off. Right, that is disgusting. That is just offensive, actually. Right, I'm going to see what I can get off with a bit of IPA. Right, I'm just going to put some fresh solder on all these pads. Yeah, the solder's gone all kind of weird. So what I'm doing now is just going around with some fresh solder and using the solder braid to sort of suck it up and then cleaning it with some IPA. This just kind of makes the pads ready to accept the new capacitors because they're not really in any state. There's sort of some kind of chemical reaction between the gunk that comes out the caps and the solder, and it just makes it go all a bit weird. So we're just kind of starting afresh, really. That was quite intense. But we're sort of, I think we're nearly there, really. Yeah, it's looking better. I did accidentally catch a bit of the connector there with the soldering iron. We've definitely got a small chance of it working. Now, you might have realised that I didn't actually tell you what all the capacitors are. And that's largely because it's irrelevant, because we're going to replace them all with the exact same value. And they are 100 UF surface mount capacitors. Now, obviously, if you're not doing surface mount capacitors and you want to do the sort of more electrolytic style ones, then again, you've got to worry about the polarity and everything like that. But the surface mount ones, you don't need to worry. So I think what I'm going to do is I'll do one of them in real time and then do the others in a whiz around fashion. I'll probably start with this one here. I am going to put a tiny bit of flux on the connections. So we'll do what we did with the other capacitors and just put a bit of solder on one side. So I'll do it on this side. Just a smidge more. Boop. Then we'll get one of our capacitors in place. I actually found some smaller 100 UF capacitors, so they're not as big as the ones I was using on the Game Gear. So it should be a little bit easier. Well, it'll be a bit more fiddly. Yeah, that's roughly in. Just put some solder on the other side. Go. We can just add a bit more solder onto this side as well. So what I'll do is I'll just whiz round and do the same in a similar fashion. But yeah, they're all 100 UF. Don't worry about the value. It's not my neatest work, but it's okay. Whether or not it will actually work as a soundboard, I don't know, because honestly, I've never seen one that's so badly damaged as this, and I'm a bit concerned about these components. But I think what I want to do before I put everything back together is just do a sanity check. So yeah, we're kind of all roughly set up. I've got the speaker plugged in. I've just got to get some power. Right, it's on. Oh my God, we have sound. Oh, thank goodness for that. Amazing. How's the volume dial? Is it crunchy? No, that's all right actually. Because this video has been quite long anyway, I think I'm not going to go through the process of putting it all back together because you've seen it coming apart, and yeah, it's quite a lengthy process, and I'm not going to like time lapse it or anything like that. I think I'm just going to use a little bit of Stairs Sticks Fix magic. So let's put it back together. There we go, a hopefully working Game Gear. It was interesting to use the hot air, and it made the process of removing the capacitors from the main board a lot quicker. Obviously I did get a bit overzealous with the heating gun round by the power connector. So yeah, I learned some lessons, and hopefully you did too. But do we have a fully working assembled Game Gear? That is the question. Let's put in Sonic again and see what happens. We do. Is that up at full brightness? Oh no, there we go. Let's turn it down a little bit. There we go, let's turn it right down. Yeah, look at that. That is so much better. Considering when we started off, you couldn't actually see it straight ahead on the overhead camera. I could sort of see it from an obscure angle, but yeah, it's definitely better. I mean, it does emphasize the fact that the Game Gear screen is terrible, but this is what we want. We want a sort of control screen for when I do my comparison, which I'll film very soon. And yeah, I don't think you can argue with that. We've taken a Game Gear that was working, although they did say in the description that it was sort of showing TV staticness on the screen, and with no sound and a very dim display. And honestly, if you've got a soldering iron and some means of magnification, or even not that, you can do this job relatively easily. It's not the most simple job in the world, and especially the first time doing it, it can be a bit tricky, but hopefully I've taught you a little bit of something to make your life easier. Well yeah, that is it for this video. So I reckon the next Game Gear video you'll see will be me comparing this and the 3 different screen kits that I got. So make sure you like and subscribe so you get a notification when that goes up. But you know, I'll be back with my normal tech nonsense. It's coming up for Halloween soon, so I'll be doing lots of scare mazes and Halloween events. So yeah, it's a little bit different, and it's a little bit less clean, I guess, because I don't edit out the swears or anything like that. So they're a little bit more grown up, those videos, but not in an odd way. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you've enjoyed it. I don't think I've got anything else to say. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. But for now, it's game over.